Was it not supposed to be a dog? Just a few hours ago, my sister-in-law, whom I had been estranged from for years, forced me, without asking, to take care of her dog while she traveled. When I found out the poor animal had already been left alone for 3 days, I rushed over immediately. But as soon as I stepped inside the apartment, I was hit with an overwhelming stench. Trash was piled high across the floor, the air was thick with filth, and the sheer state of the place made it hard to believe anyone could actually live there. "Dog, it's okay. Come out," I called, expecting the pet to be hiding somewhere out of fear. But instead of a dog, I saw something I never could have imagined: a small girl, her clothes tattered and dirty, crouched on the floor eating scraps of food. My name is Kyla. I'm 32, married for 7 years, and childless. Because of this, my relationship with my in-laws has suffered, and over time, I became completely estranged from them. Now I live a peaceful life with my husband, Dalton, and our dog, Charlie. But that peace was shattered the moment I received a message on my phone from an unknown number. "Huh! Who could this be?" I muttered, opening it with hesitation. The message left me speechless. "Hey, long time no see. I'm traveling abroad for a while, so take care of my dog. I left the keys in the mailbox, just take them." At first, I thought it was a prank. But then I recognized the phone number. It belonged to Erin, my sister-in-law, whom I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Even though we weren't in contact, it wasn't surprising she still had my number. Just as I was about to reply, another message came through, quicker than I expected. "I've been gone since the day before yesterday, so hurry up." I was stunned. If she was telling the truth, that meant the dog had been locked inside for days without food or water. The heat and humidity lately had been unbearable. If there was no air conditioning, it could be life-threatening. I had to act fast. Even if it turned out to be nothing, I needed to check. Without wasting another second, I rushed to the address in her message, completely unaware of the shocking discovery that awaited me. When I arrived, I stood before an old apartment building. There was no nameplate, but just as Erin had said, a key was in the mailbox. I hesitated. Stepping into someone else's home without permission felt wrong. But then, I heard a faint noise from inside. The dog must be in there, I thought as I quickly unlocked the door. The moment it swung open, an unbearable stench hit me like a wall. Instinctively, I covered my mouth and nose, trying not to gag. The apartment was a disaster. Trash covered every inch of the floor, making it nearly impossible to step anywhere. If the dog was trapped in these conditions, I needed to get it out, fast. Determined, I navigated through the filth, forcing my way toward the back room. The deeper I went, the worse it became. The hallway was bad, but the room beyond was even more unbearable. The curtains were drawn, blocking all light. The air was suffocating, thick with rot and decay. Every breath felt like poison, but I had no choice. I had to find the dog. As I scanned the room desperately, another noise reached my ears. I moved toward it quickly, only to bump into a stack of garbage, causing it to topple over. That accidental movement revealed something I hadn't noticed before. My heart stopped. It wasn't a dog I found, it was a child. A young girl with long, unkempt hair sat on the filthy floor. Her clothes were ragged, and she was eating whatever scraps she could find, completely oblivious to my presence. "Who are you?" I blurted out in shock. "Why are you here?" She didn't answer. She didn't even look at me. She just kept eating, as if this was normal. I stood frozen for a moment, struggling to process what I was witnessing. But then, a wave of urgency washed over me. There was no time to be shocked. This child needed help. Slowly, I stepped closer. As I neared her, she finally looked up, her wide eyes filled with fear. I softened my voice, trying not to scare her any further. "Hello, my name is Kyla. What's your name?" "Sage," she answered hesitantly. "Are you hungry?" She nodded, though she seemed unsure. I forced a warm smile, hiding the turmoil inside me. "Then why don't you come eat with me?" Instead of answering, she clenched her tiny fists. If I leave, Mommy will be mad at me. Her words made my chest tighten, but I kept my voice steady. It's okay, I reassured her. I'm your mom's sister. I'll let her know, so she won't be mad. Technically, I was her aunt by marriage, but right now, none of that mattered. What mattered was getting her out of here. Sage hesitated, then slowly got to her feet. But as she tried to move, she swayed unsteadily, looking as if she might collapse. Can I carry you? I asked gently. Her eyes widened in surprise, but after a moment she nodded. As I lifted her into my arms, I was shocked by how light she was. No child her age should weigh so little. A strong, unpleasant smell clung to her, as if she hadn't bathed in weeks. And as I held her, I realized this was just the beginning of something much bigger than I had ever imagined. As I held Sage in my arms, I fought back tears, overwhelmed with sadness and pain. Clutching her tightly, I carried her to my car and handed her some food I had picked up from a nearby convenience store. She ate hungrily, and though she was weak, she seemed stable. I took her to the hospital, relieved to hear that while she was malnourished, her condition wasn't life-threatening. But just when I thought the worst was over, an entirely new problem arose. The hospital staff, upon seeing Sage's frail condition, called the police. Before I could even process what was happening, I found myself being questioned as a potential suspect in her mistreatment. There's no way I could have done that to Sage, I protested, my voice rising in desperation. The police officers remained unconvinced. No matter how much I explained the situation, the doubt lingered on their faces. Just when I felt completely cornered, another officer arrived. Mrs. Minton, do you have any proof to support your story? He asked, calming the other officers and giving me a chance to start over. My heart pounded. I didn't have any physical proof. Just my word. But then I remembered. Wait. This. I quickly pulled out my phone and showed them the messages from Erin, the ones where she had dumped this responsibility on me without warning. The officer who had just arrived stepped away to make a call. I stood there anxiously, watching as he relayed information to someone on the other end. When he returned, his demeanor had completely changed. I was able to contact the landlord of the apartment and confirm the situation, he said. Thank you for protecting her. He handed me his business card. My name is Russo. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. Finally, the misunderstanding was cleared, and the officers apologized for the confusion. Once I was alone in the hospital room with Sage, I let out a deep, exhausted sigh. What was I supposed to do now? Dalton arrived shortly after, his face tense with concern. He had tried contacting his parents, hoping they would step up, but their response was infuriating. They brushed it off, saying they were too busy, and telling us to handle it ourselves. How could they be so indifferent to their own granddaughter's suffering? My fist clenched in anger as I looked at Sage, sleeping peacefully in the hospital bed. There was no way I could leave her with people who didn't care about her. And sending her back to Erin? That was out of the question. I turned to Dalton, making up my mind in an instant. Can we take Sage home? Dalton looked at me, surprised. Home? I mean, what else can we do? She's my niece. We have to protect her. His eyes softened. You're right. We can't just abandon her. He sighed. Looks like she's going to be with us for a while. 3 days later, Sage was discharged from the hospital and came home with us. That night, I tried to help her settle in. Let's take a bath before dinner, I suggested gently. Okay. She nodded, though she seemed nervous. To ease her worries, I spoke in a calm, reassuring voice. I got some new bath salts. They make the water all foamy. It's really fun. Sage still seemed unsure, but as she soaked in the warm water, I noticed her tense expression softening just a little. After the bath, I handed her a new set of pajamas. Here, these are for you. She took them hesitantly. I can wear this? Of course. I bought them just for you, I said with a smile. Sage stared at the pajamas for a long moment before, suddenly, tears began spilling down her cheeks. Sage? What's wrong? Are you hurt? I panicked, my voice rising in concern. She shook her head, her tiny hands clutching the fabric. Then, in a trembling voice, she whispered, This is the first time I've ever had pajamas. I'm just so happy. It feels like a dream. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. I wrapped her in a tight hug, and together, we cried. From then on, Sage expressed her joy in the simplest things. When she ate a warm meal, she would say, The rice is warm and delicious. When she lay in bed, she would whisper, It feels like a cloud. Each time, my heart ached. How deprived had she been to find happiness in things so basic? And with every moment, my anger toward Erin grew stronger. We tried to reach her, but she was completely unresponsive. Calls, emails, nothing. My in-laws were no help either. At first, they brushed us off, telling us to deal with it. Eventually, they started ignoring us altogether. Weeks passed, then months. Sage adjusted to our home, and to my surprise, she bonded quickly with Charlie. My dog, who had always been affectionate, followed her everywhere. Watching them play together, I realized something. I didn't want to just take care of Sage. I wanted to raise her as my own. That night, I finally voiced my feelings to Dalton. I want to be her mother, I admitted. Dalton nodded. I understand. But we can't adopt her without Erin's consent. I know, I sighed. But even if it's not legal, I want to raise her as if she were our own. Dalton reached over, taking my hand. If that's what you want, then I'm with you. When I told Sage about our decision, her face lit up with a hopeful smile. So, can I call you Mom and Dad? Dalton and I didn't even hesitate. We hugged her tightly, our little family finally feeling whole. A year passed. Despite my constant efforts, Erin remained unreachable. But by then, Sage and I had become inseparable. Though legally, she was still in limbo, in our hearts, she was already our daughter. One morning, while Sage was at kindergarten, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting visitors, so I cautiously opened the door, only to be met with a face I hadn't seen in over a year, Erin. Hey, Kyla! How have you been? She said, grinning in a way that sent an uneasy chill down my spine. Before I could respond, she continued, Thanks for taking care of Sage. I'll be taking her today. I blinked, unable to process what I had just heard. What? You don't have to look after her anymore, Erin said casually, as if this was some simple favor she was reclaiming. Anger boiled inside me. After abandoning her child for a year, she suddenly wanted to take her back? Without so much as a call or explanation? My fists clenched as I glared at her. You're insane if you think you can just waltz in here and take Sage without warning. I spat. Get out now! Erin scoffed, clearly unbothered. What's so insane about a mother taking back her own child? She sneered. You took care of her for a while, but that doesn't make you her mother. Then what kind of mother locks her child in a filthy apartment and disappears for a year? I shot back. At my raised voice, a passing neighbor turned toward us, watching with curiosity. Erin seemed to take notice and snorted. Whatever, she muttered. I'll be back. Get her things ready. With that, she turned on her heel and left. As soon as she was gone, I called Dalton. He rushed home from work, and we immediately put our backup plan into motion, something we had prepared for, just in case Erin ever tried to pull a stunt like this. A week later, we contacted Erin and asked her to come to our house. She must have thought we had given up because she arrived with a smug grin. Sage isn't here, I informed her. She's at kindergarten. Then why did you call me? She asked, settling onto the sofa like she owned the place, reaching for the tea and snacks I had set on the table. We need to talk, I said firmly. I'm not giving Sage back to you. Dalton and I are going to raise her. Erin laughed. Oh, Kyla, you're adorable. But let's be real, she's my daughter. And there's nothing you can do about that. She was far too confident, and that only fueled my resolve. Wordlessly, I slid an envelope across the table toward her. What's this? She asked, frowning as she opened it. As she read the contents, her smug expression twisted into shock. Her face turned pale, and her hands trembled. This isn't real, she stammered. Oh, it's real, I replied coldly. We did some digging after taking Sage in. We weren't looking for you, but we found plenty, especially about your fraudulent schemes. Erin's hands clenched around the papers. That's ridiculous, she screamed. Really? You targeted divorced men and single fathers, preyed on their heartbreak, and scammed them for money. I stated. Let me guess, your sudden interest in Sage wasn't about being her mother but about using her as a prop to trick your next victim? Erin's face twisted in fury. Shut up, you old hag. Give her back. She lunged at me, grabbing my arm with a vice-like grip. I recoiled, startled by her aggression. Just then, a deep growl echoed through the room. Charlie had leaped between us, baring his teeth, his hackles raised. His growl sent a clear warning, one more move, and he would attack. Erin flinched. What the hell is this stupid dog? She shrieked, raising her foot to kick him. Before I could react, her foot connected, not with Charlie, but with my side. Pain shot through me as I gasped, momentarily unable to move. Charlie barked furiously, snapping at Erin as she scrambled backward, realizing she had gone too far. She turned to flee, but the moment she stepped toward the door, she froze. Standing in her path were Dalton and another man, Russo, the police officer who had helped us a year ago. Erin Holmes, you are under arrest for assault, Russo declared firmly. Erin's eyes widened in panic. I didn't do anything, she shrieked, looking between the two men. You didn't do anything? Russo repeated, unimpressed. You just kicked someone in the ribs. Not to mention, we have a lot to discuss regarding your history of fraud. You can't arrest me. They're the ones harassing me, she raged. Russo calmly approached, handcuffing her wrists. You can explain that at the station, he said before leading her outside. I watched, clutching my side as Erin was taken away, her protest fading as she disappeared from view. Dalton rushed to my side. Are you okay? I nodded, wincing. It's over now, isn't it? Dalton placed a hand on my shoulder. The police are already investigating her fraud cases. They'll take care of the rest. With Erin finally out of our lives, Sage was safe. Days later, Russo informed us that Erin had been officially charged with fraud. When her crimes were exposed, all of our legal appeals were granted, Erin's parental rights were revoked, and Sage was legally placed in our care. For the first time in over a year, I felt true relief. Mom, let's take Charlie for a walk, Sage said one afternoon, smiling brightly. I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'd love that, sweetheart. As we stepped outside, hand in hand, I felt nothing but gratitude. Sage was ours now, truly ours. And from this day forward, we would finally be the family she had always deserved.